Congressman Cohen, you've listened to this. I was wondering if you might want to offer any thoughts.
Well, thank you very much. I thank each of the three panelists for their testimony, for their courage. I think we all in America, not all of us, there's some of us that are out there on the crazies in our caucus and our Congress, not our caucus, but in our Congress. But almost, I'd say 95% of the American Congress is supportive, and most of the American public. I see some Twitter messages sometimes from either Russophiles or Russian agents that make you wonder. But regardless, I appreciate it. Oz, and you in particular, I appreciated your testimony. I agree with everything you said. One of the privileges I have as co-chairman of the Helsinki Commission is to meet with some outstanding human beings who inspire me. One of whom is Bill Browder, who came and spent about an hour with me last week before he testified before our committee. Another is Kordakovsky, who spent about an hour with a couple of members of the commission and myself, and they were pretty much together on the idea that you expressed that Putin is a mafia boss, he's a bully, and he can only be stopped with power. That Macron's talking to him every other day, which I don't think he's doing now. He's having to defend himself with Le Pen, but that Putin doesn't care, and he could call him up and say, we're not going to go in and do anything. It doesn't help. He's only going to, there need to be red lines drawn. And one of the parties suggested we should have a red line in Odessa and say, if you cross this line and attack Odessa, we're going to take out your ships in the Black Sea. And then he's inevitably going to cross that red line, and then you got to take out his ships in the Black Sea. And the Ukrainians showed you could do it with Neptunes. We can do it with harpoons. It could be done easy enough, or it could be done with air flights. I don't think we should be concerned about that particularly. The other was a red line in Kharkiv. And if he attacks Kharkiv, you send in air power to destroy the air bases from which the planes came from, or the sites where the missiles came from. But you have to have red lines. You have to stand up, and you have to stop him. And that's the only way he will ever communicate any kind of peace treaty. He is a liar. Nothing he says can be believed. And much of what we see today reminds us of Syria. Indeed, Syria was maybe the canary, a very loud canary that we should have listened to. Same thing for Georgia. Same thing for Chechnya. We've seen it. America, in many ways, is fortunate this war is occurring. I hate to say it, but we're having an inevitable war with Russia, with Ukrainian troops and not NATO troops, not American troops. And all we need to do is supply them with weaponry. I can understand the concern about a no-fly zone, but I can never have understood publicly talking about the Polish MiGs and the questions of whether they should be turned over in Poland or whether they should be turned over in our base in Germany. We should have found a way to do it. And apparently we're finding a way to get our military equipment into Ukraine to help the Ukraine military. Now this quote unquote, we talk about the $800 million package, and then the next $800 million package, which contains X, Y, and Z. No airplanes, I don't believe, but who knows what'll end up happening. I don't see how they get it into the Ukrainians, particularly in eastern Ukraine. We've waited too long. And I wonder if any of the three of y'all have any idea about or have seen any convoys of equipment going? Oz, please tell me about it. Teach me.
Yeah, so from my understanding, from my contacts in Ukraine, I understand that there have been steady supply of shipments of weaponry traveling from Poland into Ukraine, and that not one of those convoys has been targeted by Russian fire in the entire duration of the war. I understand that Reuters confirmed this, that Turkish Bayraktar TB2 drones, that further of those have been delivered by the Turkish supplier, and they traveled in through Poland, through the west of the country. So as far as I understand it, the Turks, the Eastern Europeans, are proving that there can be supply lines of heavy weaponry, game-changing weaponry heading into the country from the west, from Poland, and that those convoys can be protected from Russian strikes. Our partners in Europe and are proving that it can be done, and really, America needs to.
We need
Show
upward.
show the courage of its convictions. Currently, it lacks the courage of its convictions. If America wants Ukraine to win this war, it needs ammunition. Ukraine needs ammunition. It needs material. It needs tanks. It needs fighter jets. It needs the kinds of things that will strike fear into the hearts of an already much stronger army. That's what will make the difference here. Ukrainians have already got the manpower and the will to fight in a way that's terrified the Russians, but they don't have the equipment that they need. And the one thing that we're not talking enough about is that while the equipment is very good, that's the list of equipment it's being sent slowly, and that equipment only lasts a week and a half, 2 weeks in the war here. There needs to be more, much more, and it might be unpalatable for people to hear talk of weaponry being sent to an active conflict, but this is democracy versus totalitarianism. It's light versus darkness. We have no choice but to support the Ukrainian people in this to the point of victory, and anything less than that will be a disaster for the entire European project.
I totally agree with you, and I would suggest. I've been disappointed, and I hate to say this. I'm a Democrat. I'm an American. All those things, but I've been disappointed with the response from Jump Street. Our intelligence and our Defense Department, and so many people want to stand up and go, "Oh, our Defense Department and our administration, our intelligence, salute." They were wrong from Jump Street. They said that it would be 24 to 48 hours and Kyiv would fall. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, they said it'll be 10 days to 2 weeks and Kyiv will fall. Intelligence was wrong. Defense was wrong. State Department was wrong. When one of our members suggested we should send in better weaponry, better air defense weaponry early on, the response from state, kind of under their breath, but it was audible and clear to me, was we don't want to risk sending that weaponry because they will fall so quickly to the Russians. The Russians will have our weaponry, and they will have our knowledge of the technology of the weaponry, and they will have the weaponry. Because of that, they don't have it. They didn't have it, and they don't have it because our intelligence was wrong. They could not understand a determined and motivated group that would fight for liberty and for their country and for their identities as the Ukrainians have. They couldn't see that for some reason. I have to say, I said this early on. We were in Lithuania before the war broke out, and it might have broken out. We were there, give or take, when it broke out. We might have been in Vienna, but I told a Lithuanian press assembly that we might be underestimating what Ukraine can do because a motivated group can do so much more. And I have to admit, I was thinking a little bit in my own perspective as a sports fan, and I know how a team that's under appreciated and not as strong as the other team can be fired up to beat the stronger team and to play at home and to have the home court advantage, and they can do miraculous things. And I thought the same thing could happen here, and it did happen here. But we've been wrong. As you say, we're getting the equipment in. I'm sure we are. But are we getting it to the east? How do you get it into the east when one side is Russia and the other sides are Russian troops now trying to cut the Ukrainian troops off? How do you get into Donetsk and Luhansk? How are the weaponry getting in there, do you think?
So those areas still aren't encircled. The front lines are still available, but obviously trying to get weapons like that into Mariupol would be, not feasible. But we're at a critical junction now in time where these front lines are still accessible. Are we going to wait 2 weeks before maybe 100,000 Ukrainian troops are surrounded due to a Russian offensive? We don't want to wait for that point to happen. So it really is we are at a critical junction of this war. Ukraine can win with support. It's about getting that support there now, not tomorrow, not the day after, now.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and I hope we can get it in. It seems like the administration's waking up somewhat to this current announcement. They're going to send in this additional 800 million, and they're going to do it quickly as they can. But we've been slow, and the administration's been slow, and I blame intelligence, defense, state, the whole crowd, and they're starting to wake up a bit. We're lucky that the Ukrainians are there to fight the Russians. All we need to do is give them the weapons. We need to get them the tanks. We need to get them the howitzers. We need to find a way to get them the airplanes they can fly. And if not, we need to teach them how to fly the airplanes, or maybe send an aide to go in with them in the airplane. We don't know who in the hell that guy is if something happens, but we need to get support there. Mariupol, those are such courageous men and women, and it's a disaster waiting to happen. And they're fighting, and I don't think there's much we can do at this point. Oz, you remind me a lot of my dear departed friend Christopher Hitchens. Not just your accent, but your knowledge, your clear message about what needs to happen, and good versus evil, and light versus dark. Christopher spoke that way as well, and he was one of my dear friends. I don't know.
I'm friends with his son, so.
Oh, excellent.
Alexander.
Do you know the Coburn family, or do you know of the Coburn family?
As in Patrick Coburn, and yeah, I'll have to be honest with you, particularly given his testimony to the Foreign Affairs Select Committee in the UK. His position on the Assad regime is one of the worst of any mainstream reporter working in the Middle East today. I'm not a fan of Patrick Coburn's work. I think he's very sympathetic towards the Assad dictatorship.
Well, I appreciate your candor. I know Patrick through Christopher. Patrick had a much severe case of polio than I had, but I had polio, and I have post-polio, so I have problems occasionally. But Patrick has unbelievable problems to surmount. Even getting up is difficult for him. His brother Andrew is coming to visit in Memphis for the next 4 days. He's coming in tonight, and we're going to spend a lot of time together. I didn't know Alexander. But they're a great family, and they, of course, Andrew is more sympathetic, knowledgeable about military weaponry, and that's a lot we'll discuss in the next 3 or 4 days. But thank you very much. And Olga, I can't imagine, this is your country now, and Asami, it's yours too. And to have to give up your country has got to be just the possibility of having to leave is awful. I mean, a lot of what we have is our memories. Our possessions, store in them memories, our friends, sites that we think of and remember events at, and there are parts of our lives. And to have to leave that, which so many Ukrainians have, is it's awful. It's giving up much of their life. There are many deaths. There are little deaths, and Putin doesn't care. I have been a strong vocal critic of Donald Trump. And I think a lot of what we're seeing today is because of Donald Trump. I think we didn't stand up with Ukraine when Trump was president. Instead, we tried to use them as a way to get Hunter Biden dirt, or something that they thought was dirt. And we didn't care about Ukraine, and we treated them as a political opportunity. At least Trump did. And the Republicans, not all, but most, did not impeach him for that because they were surety to his actions, and they were cowards to what is really a totalitarian, dictating, grifting, lying MF who was president of the United States. And he's no different than Putin and Orban and them. Oz, you're on.
I'd like to echo your sentiments. I completely agree. But speaking as a Brit, so I don't have any partisan affiliations here. Well, I mean, I endorsed Hillary Clinton for president in 2016. Not that my endorsement as a British journalist makes much difference. But I want to say that I think it would be unfair to let the Obama administration off the hook, including Biden, for the way that they treated and reacted to the invasion of Donbass and Crimea in 2014. That happened under Obama's watch. And I feel like if the diplomatic response had been stronger, then that we would be in a better position that we are today. And it's not about assigning blame. It's about learning where the mistakes were made and trying to stop them from happening in the future.
Well, you're right, Oz, and I was with a former Obama cabinet official the other day, and he said to me that Obama often said to him, what we did was not necessarily what we aimed to do, and it wasn't perfect, but it was better. And it's doing better is good. Better is good, but when you settle for better, you're letting problems fester, and they're going to come back on you in the future. And we had a lot of that then. That was not a perfect administration either. It was better. And the fact is, they didn't win. They didn't have a Senate for after a while. They had a Senate for a couple of terms. And we lost the House. And there's only so much you can do. Biden beat Trump. And I don't know if another candidate would have beaten Trump. Maybe they would have. But simply by stopping Trump from having another term makes Biden a great president, a great figure. Maybe not a great president, but a great figure. I'm concerned about 2022 and losing the House and losing the Senate. And I'm concerned about 2024 if that happens. I talked to Michael Cohen on occasionally, Trump's former consigliere. He doesn't think Trump will run because he couldn't stand the idea of being defeated. But if he sets up and gets Secretary of States elected that agree with him, and they change the rules in the states, which they've done, on how they determine who's in the electors at the Electoral College, he won't have to worry about losing because he'll steal it, just like he tried to do on January 6th. We had a coup d'etat. It failed. And the Republicans in our Congress are not willing to admit it or stand up to it because some of them are complicit. And there's a lot going on that's very scary in our country. And I'm concerned about our Congress. I'm concerned about our future and where we'll be. But we need to stand strong. And I think we're going to get Ukraine help. Hopefully it's going to be sufficient and we can stop the Russians because they're going to go back into Estonia. I was in Estonia not long ago, a year or so, and they talked about how the Russians came in. The Russians sent Russians into Estonia, and there's a large part of the eastern edge of Estonia that's Russian occupied. And we drove through there, and the people were walking around, and they were like Russian style architectural, if you call it architecture, almost an oxymoron, Russian architecture, but that functionality. And all the buildings look like that, and the people were walking around. They look like what you saw in movies of Russia from other days. They will move people in to try to take over, and they're trying to kill Ukrainians. They're happy when Ukrainians evacuate. They want them to leave the country and not to come back, and they want to kill them if they're there. And they will send Russians. They will move them into Ukraine to take over and make it a Russian state. So it's scary, and they will go to Estonia. I was in Lithuania. They've moved their troops in Belarus right to the edge of border of Lithuania. They've taken over the old Soviet forts, and they will come into Lithuania. And then we'll have to have a ground war and a war, but it'll happen. And it's better to fight it in Ukraine than to fight it with our troops, et cetera, in Estonia and Lithuania, which would happen in Poland and wherever. This is the crucial moment in the fight for democracy and the fight for the West. So thank you all.
Thank you.